The meeting is being recorded.
Especially for Fran.
Yeah, okay, now we're good. Thank you, Ralph. Okay, so God is making this decision on Rosh Hashanah about what's going to happen. The prayer states that through repentance, prayer, and good deeds, we can change any unfavorable decrees. We have 10 days to convince God that we'll change the behavior that made God give us this unfavorable future fate in the first place. I want to look at this prayer through a different lens. I certainly want to reject the picture of the guy up there with that big book deciding what our future will hold. I also want to reject the prospect of us begging him to change his mind, of us promising to be better people in the coming year so that he will change his mind. That's the way some people think of prayer, as a petitionary practice. I have another way of thinking of prayer, which I'll explain. There actually is a way of translating the key line of this prayer so that the prayer proves more helpful to us. The key line in this prayer is usually translated as repentance, prayer, and good deeds avert the severe decree. Many people these days begin by saying, or they translate the Hebrew, that instead of saying avert the severe decree, what the prayer is really saying, these other people say, is that we want to mitigate the severity of the decree. We want to mitigate the harshness of the decree. Bad things happen and we can't always change that. We just have to deal with it. We want to ease our load as best as we can. We want to soften the blow. Our prayer book expands all of this. So our prayer book does not translate it, it actually puts in its 2 cents. Our prayer book says that the high holiday practices do 4 things. These practices make it easier to take what God may decree. They make it easier to deal with what life holds in store. They make facing the world easier, and they make facing ourselves easier. So what are the high holiday practices that make these 4 things easier? These practices are usually translated as repentance, prayer, and good deeds. Teshuvah, tefillah, and tzedakah. Good deeds, tzedakah, is where the rubber meets the road. It's our behavior. If the issue is interpersonal, tradition requires us to work things out with the people in our lives as best we can before Yom Kippur. It also might be a matter of knowing where we've strayed from what's right interpersonally and making it a point to simply change this behavior. If the behavior is something like overeating or drinking too much, we are urged again to simply change the behavior. The behavior can also have to do with ways we work to make a better community or society. We may want to begin this work in some specific way or resolve to do what we've been doing differently. But all this sounds in many ways like making New Year's resolutions. We just do it. And sometimes that does work. But sometimes this approach does not work. Emmanuel Levinas helps us here. Levinas was a brilliant 20th century philosopher whose work on the primacy of ethics influenced many. He also spoke on Jewish topics. In his talk on the high holidays, he said that the really hard work is changing the more intractable behavior that harms others or ourselves. He says that sometimes the hardest thing is to reach deep down to fathom what it is that made us miss the mark in the first place. This hard work is largely done alone. I call this work prayer. I want to call this work prayer. So here's where we stand. The point is to make it easier to handle what God may decree, make it easier to handle what life holds in store, make it easier facing the world, and make it easier facing ourselves. We do this by working things through with other people and thereby learning the behavior changes necessary from our side to make the relationship work. Sometimes behavioral changes are clear, and we make the changes through our own willpower, through New Year's resolutions. All of that is tshuva, a turning around, a change in behavior. Sometimes, though, deeper work is necessary for the behavior change to happen. We need to dig deeper to do tshuva. That's what I'm calling prayer. And the point of it all is upstanding behavior, behavior that gives us a sense of personal goodness and strength, which helps us to handle life's rough spots. That's what I'm calling tzedakah. Of course, all three of these things, tshuva, tefillah, and tzedakah, interpenetrate and work together simultaneously. And also we work them all year round. But the high holidays and all of the ritual and amazing language in our high holiday prayer book are props for this process that we pay special attention to this time of year. So the basic question is, what does it mean to change? So let's get ourselves ready to meditate. Finding our foundation, feeling this plumb line that's directing the top of our head to the heaven, and the plumb line also reaching to the center of the earth, and befriending our breath. I'll come back at 11:29. As we're slowly coming back to the room, I'm going to read a blessing by John O'Donohue. The name of the blessing is For a New Beginning. In out of the way places of the heart, where your thoughts never think to wander, this beginning has been quietly forming, waiting until you were ready to emerge. For a long time, it has watched your desire, feeling the emptiness growing inside you, noticing how you willed yourself on, still unable to leave what you had outgrown. It watched you play with the seduction of safety and the gray promises that sameness whispered, heard the waves of turmoil rise and relent, wondered, would you always live like this? Then the delight of your courage kindled, and out you stepped onto new ground, your eyes young again with energy and dream, a path of plenitude opening before you. Though your destination is not yet clear, you can trust the promise of this opening. Unfurl yourself into the grace of beginning that is at one with your life's desire. Awaken your spirit to adventure. Hold nothing back. Learn to find ease in risk. Soon you will be home in a new rhythm, for your soul senses the world that awaits you. So I'm going to turn off the recording, if I can figure out how. Oops.